Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here with Stone Payton, another episode of GSU ENI Radio. And Stone, this one sounds like it's going to have a little international flavor.
Well, it does. It seems like the whole day has got to have a bit of an international flavor. So I think that's our theme for the day. First up in this episode, please join me in welcoming to the broadcast Department Chair, Department of World Languages and Cultures for GSU, and Director for Center of Urban Language Teaching and Research here at GSU, Dr. Bill Nichols. Good afternoon, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. Great to see you guys.
Well, Bill, before we get too far into things, tell us kind of in general terms about the World Languages and Culture Department. How are you serving folks through that?
So we're an academic department here at Georgia State University, and we offer a number of languages and a number of subfields within those languages. So we offer things like Spanish, French, German, Korean, Chinese, and then within those languages, we have faculty that specialize in applied linguistics and cultural studies. And we offer courses that focus on business, that focus on intercultural competence and things like that. So, a wide range of languages, a wide range of fields, and with a focus on really endowing our students with a kind of global mindset that prepare them for careers in a range of fields after they graduate.
So now how do you all play with the GSU ENI folks?
So this is a recent collaboration that is developed. I had coffee recently with the director, and we talked about kind of different ways that we could connect and collaborate and interface. And we've started doing a couple of public facing events, specifically tying kind of the study of culture and language with entrepreneurship. And so one event we had a few weeks ago was something where we co-sponsored a group of Cuban entrepreneurs who came to campus and talked about some of the difficulties that they face in Cuba and how that's different from kind of what entrepreneurship looks like in the United States and what kind of avenues are open for collaboration between students at GSU and students and entrepreneurs in other parts of the world.
So now how do you feel that GSU does in terms of kind of the international education and the different avenues that there are for a student to pursue, at least some globalism?
Well, I think we do a pretty good job, but there's always more that could be done. And that's kind of where I feel our department plays a vital role is really rethinking and reimagining what that looks like in terms of any discipline. Either, our department is housed in the College of Arts and Sciences, whereas ENI is in the Robinson College of Business. And so for us, thinking beyond the limits of the humanities or the College of Arts and Sciences and really think of how we can interface with other units in other parts of the college and the university, as well as connecting with community partners and stakeholders in the city of Atlanta.
What's an example of a community partner that you work with?
There's a small car company in town named Mercedes-Benz.
Yes, I've heard of them.
They are a key collaborator with us. They're a sponsor of an event that we organize through the center, that's housed within the department. There's an event that we organize in October in the fall called World Languages Day, where we bring roughly 1,000 high school students to campus to talk with businesses, organizations, government agencies, and whatnot about why they need to study language and culture and how that affects their career after graduation. And Mercedes-Benz has been a consistent sponsor of that event and has a very prominent presence there.
Now, maybe you can educate the listeners somewhat about how international Atlanta is in terms of the diversity of a lot of companies that are global companies have a presence here to some degree, and there's so many consulates.
Yeah, I mean, if listeners don't follow the online publication Global Atlanta, they definitely should. And it'll give them a really great window into everything global that's happening in the city. I mean, you mentioned a number of the number of consulates that are here, as well as a number of international companies. But it's also important to remember that any company, even an American-based company, is doing international business, no matter how big or small. even a small size company is going to have to be thinking of supply chains across borders and kind of international connections. I spoke of World Languages Day. There's one company that I won't mention the name of, but we've tried to recruit them to come to World Languages Day. And they said, well, we're not an international company. We're a domestic company. And I said, but your client base is going to be diverse. It's going to be multicultural, and your employee base is going to be international and multicultural. So it's important for, people who you're trying to attract as employees to be thinking of those international skills and the ability to work across a diverse team.
So now, from a student standpoint, why do you think it's important for them to get involved with the World Languages and Cultures Department?
Well, I think for me, like, it's important for, my numbers and credit hours and whatnot.
No, I understand that, but for them, to have this kind of background and this understanding about the languages and the cultures of other countries, why do you think that a person going through college, why they should have think that's important?
Well, one of the things when we're talking with students that we hear is, they'll say, well, why should I study a language, or why should I study cultures if I'm not going to live or work abroad? And as we've really done a lot of outreach to these community partners, especially in industry, what we hear from them is what they value are students who have this empathy for diversity, who have a sense of intercultural competence, who are self-starters, who are self-disciplined, who simply work well with others. And that's exactly what we give students. And so what I tell them is, we're preparing you for life after Georgia State in any kind of career field. And so, and at the end of the day, I think studying a language or having this kind of global mindset and a wide view makes society all the better.
Now, I understand that, and I appreciate that. But what do you tell that student that maybe went through, elementary, middle school, high school, and took, a language for all that time and still doesn't know anything? They see it as more of, I'm just checking a box that I had to do this, rather than really learning the language or really even understanding the culture somewhat.
Right. Well, so one thing that we're trying to do is through this center, the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, is connect with those K through 12 programs and really try to build this K through 20 pipeline. But I think with that question of, the complaint that, well, I studied this in grade school or high school and it never stuck. I just remind them, let's remember that it takes a long time to learn a language. And often there's not very many elementary programs, and often students have studied this in high school and they're not doing it on a daily basis. So let's be a little more forgiving of ourselves and our teachers, I guess, and remember that it takes a lot of time to study a language and to learn a language. And often we get caught up in, well, we need to be at this level of fluency that is like a native speaker, which is often, it takes decades to perfect that. So, and I think as I talk with students, they realize they know a lot more and they remember a lot more than they think they do. It's in there. But it does take daily practice, kind of like math or, some other kinds of disciplines where you can't cram it. You need to,
like, an hour in a week isn't going to.
That's right.
It's not going to work for language.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, what they need is a kind of immersive experience in the country, in the culture. And so that's another thing. We've really expanded our study abroad offerings to give students those opportunities. And we're working on fundraising and development to provide scholarships for students to go abroad, whether it's to Morocco, whether it's to Spain, Latin America, China, or Korea, or wherever. France, we're working on exchanges with universities throughout Europe and France, Francophone Caribbean countries. Our main goal is to give students that opportunity to really get into the language and the culture and hone those skills. Because an hour a day when 23 hours of the rest of the day are in English, it's going
to be hard.
It's going to be really hard. It's a steep hill to climb.
So now, do you think that that's kind of part of the secret sauce of GSU, this kind of having this emphasis on the global community, studying abroad? world languages, the international business school, the business kind of curriculum that you guys have. Is that some of the parts of GSU that makes it different than maybe other colleges here in Georgia?
I think that's a really keen observation. I think one of the things that we've tried to do, there's an event that we do once or twice a semester where we connect students studying languages, GSU students studying languages, with international students who are here from abroad studying English, and say, well, let's have a conversation hour where they're able to meet people from other cultures and other languages and practice their language skills, but also just develop that human connection with people abroad. But I think you're absolutely right. There's a certain kind of advantage that GSU has over any other university because of our urban setting, because of the kind of students we have. We have a number of students who come from very diverse backgrounds, linguistically, regionally, internationally, and that gives our students this really wealth of diversity in any of their classrooms.
Well, tell us who you brought.
So I'm here today with Dr. Shuai Lee, who is our Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Department of World Languages and Cultures, and Dr. Hakyoon Lee, who is an Assistant Professor in Korean in our department.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So how'd Bill do?
Good. Very well. Excellent.
So what's your take on the program?
The program of our department, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, yes. So we are currently offering 3 BA programs and 2 MA programs, plus a graduate certificate program, interpretation translation. And we offer 8 minors in certificate of language ability, plus a joint degree program with the Department of Economics on campus.
Now, how do you see the student progressing through this program? Is this something that you want them to have to learn this other language to help them in their career, or is there actually a career path, like you mentioned, translation? Is this for the person that wants to be a translator? Or, So,
trying very hard to not just to do the theoretical part, but really to emphasize the applied part throughout the years, through our curriculum. For example, in our 4th year language courses, there's a component I think that we have across the languages will be the languages for international business, or language for business, or language for international economics program. Those courses are taught in the target language, but we emphasize the connection with international business or business community.
So now, in these programs, is the emphasis on the language part or the culture part?
It's both. I think the language and culture cannot be separated. We emphasize the integration of language and culture from day one.
But it's always in the language that they're learning? It's not English and the language that they're learning?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So then they have to be pretty good at it in order to.
No, people always think language and culture is kind of separated as culture as something add on once you get a certain level of proficiency, which is not the case. There are many things that you can do with, to talk about the culture, even though you're in the elementary level classes. For example, greetings, right? How do you greet appropriately? In a target language. I'm teaching Chinese. I can speak of Chinese. Give you just one simple example, right? So in China, people greet each other, especially close friends or close colleagues, around lunchtime, dinner time, by saying, which is roughly translation to English as "Have you eaten?" This is a greeting in China. But in America, I guess it's more of an implicit invitation to lunch or to dinner, right?
Right.
So being able to really understand how to greet is very simple, like a Chinese one-on-one type of thing, is key.
Right.
Right? Because you don't want to create misunderstandings when you communicate across cultures.
And then the student that comes into the program, are they people that don't know any Chinese at all, or can you go into the program knowing no Chinese?
Sure, absolutely. We offer from first year Chinese, across the different languages, the same, right? With absolutely no knowledge.
So nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know one word, and I can go in and then go through the 4 years.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of the 4 years, what's a reasonable expectation of success?
Well, of course, there are individual differences, right?
Sure.
And there are differences across languages, to be honest with you, right? Chinese, Korean, Arabic will be more difficult and takes more time than Spanish or French and German, for example, right? Mm-hmm. But in general, we aim for a intermediate, high, advanced, low this range according to the ACFO standards.
And then is part of going through the program, will I go to this country and spend some time there? Because I would think that accelerates the learning. If I'm there for a month or two, then it forces me to use it every day and kind of.
Oh, absolutely. As Bill just mentioned, we offer 8 summer study abroad program in addition to 2 spring break study abroad program and a couple of exchange programs. Those study abroad experience really accelerates their language proficiency development. Now, one of the tricks is that many students think, we should go to the target country from day one, which is not something that we normally recommend. Because once you're in the target country, you want to maximize your learning experience, right? If you go in with absolutely zero knowledge, how are you going to?
You're overwhelmed.
Exactly. So we typically recommend our students to go after taking at least 1 year of courses.
So that way you have some foundational understanding.
Exactly.
And then that probably now you can accelerate the learning because you already know something.
Exactly. Otherwise, you'll be the same, classroom. The only difference is going to be
it's another
China.
country.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So now, Hakyoon?
Yes.
Your work is mainly in Korea?
Yeah, I'm coordinating Korean program at the department.
And then, so how is that program?
This program is one of the fast-growing programs in the department. So I started to teach 2013 with 50 students. 50? Yeah, 50 students, 2 sections of the beginning classes. Now we have about 200 per semester.
Wow.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Why the big increase?
To be honest with you, K-pop is a big
K-pop.
hit. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's a bridge for the young people.
Right. I ask students their motivation to start the learning Korean, and many of them, answer that they start to love in K-pop from their high school and middle school, and once they join college, they start to learn Korean.
So now you have a degree in K-pop. You teach them to be K-pop
that
performers.
That is a great idea.
Working on that?
Yeah. And another reason is that we have many heritage Korean students.
So their background's Korean, so they want to learn more.
More Korean, like the learners that you mentioned, like they studied in Saturday schools in their younger years, but they want to learn more about it. So I think our department offer the different level of the language learning opportunity, like a study abroad or internships. So they really intensify the student language.
So now, how does an internship work in the language? Am I going there just to learn as a tourist, or is there kind of a business component where I am doing an internship and I'm doing work in that country to learn about that?
Well, I mean, there's different models for internships. We've had some students through Spanish, for example, work with the U.S. Department of Commerce. And so they may or may not be using their language every day, but they're using some other kind of cultural component, or they're using some knowledge that they've acquired. We've had students working as interns with the Latino Democratic Caucus just up the street here. So it could be with a government, with a business, French students working with the French consulate, or with the Quebec Trade Office. And so a lot of times students will get caught up in, should I be, I want a job where I'm using my language every day. So one of the things is, there's the language component, there's the cultural component, but then there's all these other soft skills, that now we're realizing aren't so soft, that they're the kind of core skills that a business is looking for. An employer
right, because it's relationship building, and that's the key to build rapport and trust and likability so that they can do business successfully.
Exactly. And so, for example, the message we're trying to get to students is don't only think of this in terms of language or even culture. And so one thing we've done is we've developed a speaker series where we bring alumni back. We call it Speaking Professionally. So we're talking about professions. We're also talking about speaking languages. And so this year we had a student who was a French BA and minored in marketing and now works for IBM in Austin, Texas. And he says, what he does, especially with this Scrum model where there's these small teams, he says, I'm constantly working on communication skills upward and downward and across the team. Another student was a BA in Spanish and an MA in Spanish, and she now works for NCR. And so, these are two tech companies, but they're hiring humanities majors and specifically people with language skills. And then the other student we invited this fall was a German major who now works for a consulting firm connected with Porsche. So, these are really big name companies. And so students can hear and they're seeing themselves in these alumni who are recent alumni and saying, God, that could be me. I didn't realize that I could do that. And
so they may not have connected the dots. Maybe that's a misconception. They think that, if I'm going to get this degree, then I'm in this kind of a lane.
Exactly.
Where actually it's more broad than they anticipate.
Exactly. And specifically the student in Spanish, when she came, she said, people kept telling me, well, the only thing you're going to do with that major is teach or translate
that language. Right.
And she says, no, I'm going to do whatever I want. And so I think one of the things we're trying to do with students is also educate them about when you go to a networking event or you go to a job interview, how do you tell the story of your language background? How do you tell the story of your study abroad? And so there's another student so we've recently formed an advisory board of alumni and friends of the department. There's one student who came and spoke to my class this fall and said, I didn't do an internship. My study abroad, she did a year in Spain. She said, my study abroad was better than any internship. Because when I'm in an interview and they ask me about my internship and I tell them I did a year-long study abroad, they put their pens down and say, tell me about that. I wish I had done that. I really regret I didn't do it. And so it's this really unique part of of these students' profile that speaks volumes about them as human beings and their experiences.
Now, is that part of your work as the department chair, that you have to get the student to maybe think bigger than they are thinking, that they see it as, I'm just a blah, 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 or I'm just a German major. They're not seeing that all the tentacles that are connected with that. Well,
exactly. And I appreciate that you use the word tentacles, because I often say that, as a language department, our field is not defined for us. We're not, say, psychology or philosophy or applied linguistics. We can kind of define our field for ourselves. It's a mix of various subfields, but what's key for us is to be tentacular. And I use that word, so I really appreciate that you said that.
See, it's all the pre-show research that we do.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And so we try to kind of insinuate ourselves into other disciplines. Say, look, so we work really closely with the Creative Media Industries Institute. You joke about a major in K-pop. We're actually talking with the CMII about some kind of joint degree possibilities that would connect Korean specifically with software development or media development. Mm-hmm. So that's a BA in K-pop is not out of the realm of possibilities.
That's right. But now, say that was to come about. Now, how does your department, how would you make something like that come from an idea that's thrown on a whiteboard maybe to, okay, what do we have to do to make that an actual thing?
Well, and so this is kind of where, I've talked with faculty in the department and other departments across the country about how, as language departments, we need to be entrepreneurial. So this is one of the kind of really interesting points of connection that we've developed with the ENI is, we're thinking of, what are the ways that we can break the mold and say, okay, we have this crazy idea. How do we take it from a concept to reality and, almost as a project, a kind of business project, right? And so, it starts with faculty and, identifying, how can we identify the core skills? What are the classes they would need? And at the end of the day, it's, again, building relationships and having these conversations. So talking with people in CMII or talking with people in ENI or reaching out to other departments saying, what do you think of this? And then identifying who are our stakeholders, who are our partners, and then just kind of map it out. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a several year process. It could be 2-3 years. And so, Hakyoon has already identified some external funding to help support this so that we could build out, because we would need to hire faculty and things like that. So,
a choreographer. There's a lot of work to be done for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, what's your most rewarding part of the job for you, of seeing that light bulb moment happen for the student when they see that, hey, this is bigger than I imagined it could be?
Yeah, for me, it's all about the students. For me, it's seeing students come to say World Languages Day and this all of a sudden their eyes light up and they hear about possibilities that they had never dreamt of, about going abroad or career options that are open to them that they would never even have imagined for themselves. So that for me, whether it's undergraduate or high school students, for them to see these connections is fantastic.
Hakyoon?
Yes.
For you, what is the most rewarding part?
Oh, I think the student growth is very rewarding part. So I really enjoy communicating with the students and learn their needs and to meet their needs to provide some additional courses and projects and resources. I think that's the most rewarding part of my job.
What is the moment like at the end of the semester when someone graduates where you're high-fiving? What is that action that the student's doing that makes you all say, hey, we did it, that was a success?
I think the continuity of language study and then to observe that moment is very good. Like a student finishing their, fourth year and then they not, and then graduate, they don't stop learning language, but they go to, the student who went to study abroad, I would say 80% of them going back to Korea again for their job, like a teaching job and some other jobs.
Right, so you can see that what the foundation that was built is kind of gone full circle.
Like a lifelong learning of the language. I think that's very,
I agree. I think, seeing, because I have a student now she went to Spain on an exchange program that I direct, and she graduated and then moved to Spain. Mm-hmm. And we've had students who have studied Chinese and moved to China. And so their world just gets so much bigger, and that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now how does GSU kind of help in that regard? I'm a student, I go through the program. Is there stuff that GSU is doing? I know that they make the study abroad pretty affordable. Like you're paying a lot better pricing to go through study abroad than if you were just call up and make an airline
One of the example can be the study abroad fair. We have a 2 study abroad fair, like a big event, university-wide study abroad fair 2 times per year. And then for the fair, students get the information about study abroad, not only the program, but there are lots of scholarship opportunities, what they can apply for. And also we invited a student who went to study abroad.
To talk about their experiences.
Yeah, to share their experience. That was great. Yeah.
Now, is there any alumni that have reach back out to you after they've completed and talked about the value of the program?
Absolutely. So we have this speaker series I mentioned before, but then we've developed this advisory board because of alumni who have stayed connected with the department and have these ideas of how they could help mentor existing GSU students and how they could kind of give back to GSU because they feel they've received so much. So this is, for them, it's more than just an undergraduate education. They feel that a deep connection to the university.
It's a sense of community, I think.
Absolutely.
Now, do you find that, Shuai, in terms of your group, that they kind of support each other beyond, even after they graduate, they still stay connected?
Yeah, absolutely. We maintain connections with our graduates through social media. For example, the Chinese social media WeChat, we have a group of 50, 60 students. Many of them are graduated. Several of them are working in China now. Now, some of them are coming back and trying to recruit our current students to work in China. So I think that's fantastic. Right. We're creating a platform and to foster communication among our graduates and the current students.
Now, Bill, how do you protect against kind of these groups being siloed in terms of, okay, the Chinese people are hanging out with Chinese people, the Korean people? So how do you do things to kind of get them all?
That's actually an excellent question. You've done fantastic research. Because one of the things that is often a challenge in a department like ours, because of the diversity of fields and the diversity of languages, is the question of how do you hone a common vision for the department. And so that's something that has been an ongoing conversation this year in our department meetings, how we can kind of connect. So it isn't the Chinese is isolated from Korean or Spanish or French, but there's a common enterprise amongst all of us. And one of the things that we've come to is to think about kind of this intercultural competence and what that means and what that looks like and how it benefits the students and how that's something that we all do in various ways, whether we're in applied linguistics or cultural studies or Spanish or French or German. We're all focused on the students kind of developing a global mindset and thinking and about how that can impact life after graduation.
Well, good stuff. Now, if somebody wanted to learn more about the Department of World Languages and Culture or the Center of Urban Language Teaching and Research, the coordinates, websites for either of those?
So we're on the website. It's wlc.gsu.edu for the department, and then for culture, it's cultr.gsu.edu. And so there we have information about programs, curricular offerings, degrees, and whatnot. But we also maintain a pretty steady presence on social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram. And especially on Instagram with the center, that's CULTR LRC GSU. LRC is a language resource center that's funded through the Department of Education. But we have a number of kind of postings on Instagram that are language-related puns. So if you enjoy puns and you enjoy languages, you'll enjoy a lot of the Instagram posts on the culture profile. And for the department, it is GSU WLC for Facebook, and for Instagram, it's WLC GSU. So there you can find information about upcoming events, speaker events, recruitment events, etc.
Good stuff. Well, thank you all for sharing your story today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, this is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We will see you all next time on GSU ENI Radio.